Good day. Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Brian from How We Got Here Genealogy. How's things, everybody, today? Just 1 second here. So there we go. Just 1 second here. Thank you very much. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the stream. If you can just let me know where you're watching from, that would be great. I'm just checking in here, getting everything ready. So how's everybody today? Let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're from. So today, as promised, I going to be looking at the idea of starting a family tree. That's easier than you think, because honestly it is, but it also is harder than you think sometimes. Just getting everything ready here. Okay, so it looks like I'm good to go. So yeah, like I said, just mention in the chat where you're from. I'd love to hear from you. I do like to answer any questions you might have during these streams. A second here. Yeah, I like to answer any questions you might have during these streams. So if you have one, do put it in chat, or you can use the form at ask@howwegothere.ca. So today, I don't know if you've been following my recent life events, but I'm actually pretty much getting started close to back to normal. Today was my first day where I spent most of it in my office doing some work for some clients, doing some work on preparation for some upcoming videos. One thing I have to say is I do have a series coming out on the Canadian census that should be coming out in, I'm starting it, the first one should launch actually on Monday, which is, if I'm correct, let me double check my calendar to make sure I'm saying it right, that because the last little bit days have sort of gotten mixed up for me. So yeah, Monday is February 2nd, so I should have 2 videos coming out during that week on the Canadian census, one on the 2nd and one near the end of the week. So I'm looking forward to that. I just finished filming the first of the series. There's going to be 10 videos in all. As they're going to be shorter videos, but taking into depth to sort of some of the aspects of each individual census that is available in Canada, and how to use it in your advantage when you're doing your family history research. So I see a few more people are still joining. Is my audio okay? That's I do like to ask that. So sometimes it seems like my audio is not working as much as well as I think. So I do want to make sure that it is working. If there's any issues, let me know. Seeing that nobody said there's any issues, I'm assuming there isn't. My recent issues with my heart have caused some issues. one thing I had been planning on doing was I was planning on hoping getting to Roots Tech this March, but I think I might delay that as I really don't want to travel, particularly out of country at this time, especially in the United States. Not because of anything political there, just with the medical insurance, and if something did happen, there could be quite a cost. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So yeah, unfortunately, I will not be at the Roots Tech this year. It was going to be my first year there, so I had actually been looking forward to it. I'd been planning it for since the fall, but I just think, yeah, the risk isn't worth it right now. Okay. I'm gonna just try something here for just one quick second. I'm just gonna play a song while I just quickly do something. Just getting something ready here. Let's see if I can get that set up there. Okay, so let's go back to chat. My audio is great, perfect. Appreciate it. So yeah, talking about this in this video, that starting a family tree is easier than you think. Like I said at the beginning, it's also unfortunately can be harder than you think as well. Some people think it's quite easy, and some people do take it quite easy and don't do the proper background work they need to in developing their family tree. They just tend to, there's my bald head showing. They just tend to might go on Ancestry or Family Search and see trees that their family's part of, and just start clicking into them, and automatically including large numbers of people who probably are not in their actual family tree. Especially often you'll see that they have duplicates. They have people that are beyond the timeline that would be appropriate for that person in that error, that particular tree. So just one second here. I'm trying to get a few things to share. Ready? Okay. Where did I put that? 1 second. Oh yes, I think I know. It's in here. Just give me 1 second while I look for it. I do most of my stuff I keep on Google Drive, so I'm usually pretty good at finding the things I want. I try to keep it organized, but unfortunately, Google Drive doesn't do everything that I ask it to. Just 1 second here while I look for this. It's not there. Oh, I know where I put it. That's right. I never actually bothered downloading it yet. I have it on a particular piece of document. So 1 second here. Just trying to get this all set up. See if this does it right how I want. Sorry, and then I'll get sharing. So yeah, starting it is often it depends on how you go about it. Okay, let's try this a different way. Okay, I'm trying this a different way of doing that. And there it goes. I think I might have used this, what I'm using here before. Actually, I think I used it sometime just before Christmas, but I'm going to use it again. Okay, so yeah, it's often some people do find it. They think it's really hard to get started, but getting started is actually partially the easy part. I don't know how many of you answered my poll today about where you are in your family tree, whether you've started one or not. I'm going to let that poll go for a while. But as it goes, going to see who so I'm actually having to recreate the whole presentation here. I have all the images, but they just weren't put in to a proper thing. Okay. So this might take me longer to get this up than I thought. I thought I had everything ready, but it wasn't in a proper format yet. So so yeah. So all depends where you are starting. And most people, it seems obvious, but the best place to start is with what you already know. So most people are able to get up to their grandparents with no issue. Most people know their own grandparents, and that actually kind of works good depending on the age of the person. And most jurisdictions have some type of cutoff for where public records become available. And it's usually, for somebody my age, it's usually close to that point where their grandparents were born, either just before, just after. So knowing you, often you don't have those records unless you actually physically have them of your parents, your grandparents. Often you won't be able to find your own parents' wedding marriage registration because it just does not exist in the public domain. You can't order it if you can prove you're related to them. In some jurisdictions, or you might be able to get it from your parents yourselves, just like the often the at that point you sort of get stuck. But that's a good point. That's usually where most people wind up, especially people my age. So they're starting, if their grandparents are deceased, that might be where they sort of gets stuck. And I'm going to show you some examples. And this is specifically, let's do this. I'm going to show you my own family, my own grandparents. Okay. So my family's from Nova Scotia, and it's very I'm going to use them as specific as an example. I'm going to show you my family tree and where they're at. For my mom's parents, her father's name was Andrew Anderson. Her mother's name was Charlotte, and her mother's maiden name was McKinnon. Both are now deceased. So unfortunately, I'm no longer to avail myself to be able to ask them any questions, which is the best way to get started. Is simply going to those relatives, your older relatives, and gathering all that information. I was able to gather some information prior to that, and some I knew just because in my mother's case, both her grandmothers were still alive in my lifetime, and I knew them, and I had some information about them and who they were. So just 1 second here. Just going to turn this off. Okay. So I'm gonna start though with most people. If they know their grandparents, they might be able to do something similar to this. So I'm going to share here. I'm going to share this entire screen. Not going to share audio in it. Okay, so I'm going to share this right now. Just 1 second here. So this is the Nova Scotia Archives. Being as they're from Nova Scotia, it's a great place to start. There's other places you might want to start, depending obviously where your grandparents are from. Now this is the Nova Scotia rules for what they have for when people records are available. So it tells you here what the births are, the marriages, and their deaths. often marriages tend to be, deaths are usually more recent. Marriages are in between and births are longer. Sort of the reasoning behind that is they want to have people that are more likely no longer living that would be affected, and you're revealing their private information. So one of the best places, if you can search, is for, if you know where your grandparents were married, start searching for the marriage records. So this is what I'm doing because I do know this. I know that my now and there's a few things I know about them. Now they are all from they're all both from Cape Breton. My grandfather was from a little community called Donkin. My grandmother was from living at that time in a community called Glace Bay. They eventually wound up in Glace Bay, but they were married in the city of Halifax, and and that's in Halifax County. And I know that because they were married the day in 1943. It was a day before my grandfather shipped off to fight in World War II. So I'm going to be very specific here. I'm going to put 1943 to 1943, and I'm going to search. So this is a great thing because what it does is it has you. Often marriage records has their parents' information, which gets you to that next generation. Yeah, that's a big thing. A lot of times somebody in the family has all this information, but it doesn't get passed along. So that's one of the other things too, is one of the first questions you should ask is, everybody in your family, has anybody already done a family tree? Does anybody have a family tree? Do they have a family Bible or any information? And then getting to those people, asking them the specific questions. So if you can't, which often is the case because people come to it too late, there's I wish I had could have, would have, should have type situations as far as finding out that information. So if I'm looking at this, my grandparents here, so I'm going to find out a few things. Now this is interesting. My grandfather, he belonged to United Church. So in 1927, the Presbyterian churches in Canada, Methodist churches, and some Congregationalist churches, and it wasn't all Presbyterian churches, they came and they formed together the United Church of Canada, which is actually kind of an important distinctive to try to understand where he, because he was born before that, where he would have belonged to. You might be able to find out from records as we go back. So let's go back. We're going to see what we can do as far as building my family tree. And I'm going to use a program called Legacy Family Tree Maker. It's free. I do recommend you do get it if possible. I'm going to show it right here. Oh, let's go back. I'm not going to show that. Just 1 second. Here, I'm going to go new. So when it starts with this, it wants your basic information to start, so you can put that in there. And I'm just going to go finished. I'm going to name it. What's the next thing it asks? So I'm just going to call this using the initials, how we got here, genealogy, and I'm going to call it live. And this is the specifically one that I will be using for here. So this is, it starts, it's going to put me, it gives me a chance to add my mother and my father. I'm going to add my mother first. So I'm putting some of her information in here. And this is just because I do want to, Start doesn't have this right, so I want to show you a few things later. We can do this. So I'm to the point where I'm going to add her parents. And let me see if I can do this right. So I have her there. I'm going to add my father. And it comes up and it's going to go add a new person. And what it's going to do is so I'm going to, his birth date is actually today. Is the anniversary of his birth date. He was born on January 29th. And he actually died 10 years ago, and 2 days ago was the 10th anniversary of his death. And both of these events occurred in Halifax. And when you're doing these things, it's important to have as much information as you can. But again, these things here, I'm not going to have any, there's not any public records of, right? So I don't have any sources or anything to show. I can put their marriage date. It popped up and asked me for that. Okay, I'm just going to enter that Okay. So I'm working on my mother's information. Like I said, so I have her parents there. Just 1 second here. Yes. So yeah, I have their information here. Again, of course, I didn't put their full names in there just because I just don't, for personal reasons. Having some of that information can, it's just for privacy's sake. So I'm going to add her father. And now, this is where often you'll know the information and you can put it in without a source. So I'm going to show you what to do with a record, with a source, and without. So we're just going to put that in for now, and we're going to save it because we're going to go and we're going to add her mother there as well. Now you're going to see I'm using a different name. It's because her real name was Florence Charlotte, but she went by Charlotte. So I could put Florence in brackets, but I'm actually just going to use Charlotte. And her maiden name was McGinn. So we're going to save this information. And now this is where it's asking for their marriage information. We have their marriage record because we were just looking at it. So let's look at their marriage record. Oh. 1 second here. Let's look at their marriage record I had open. So there we go. There's their marriage record. So their marriage record is going to tell us a little bit of information about them. Again, particularly, I was specifically looking for this to find out about their parents, but also other information about them. If you do not know, you can find usually in their marriage record. So you find, like I said, my grandfather's church, you can find his father's name, Arthur Anderson, and where his father was born, and then his mother with her maiden name. Nova Scotia is really good. I unfortunately doesn't have where she was born. I do happen to know that, and it does happen. This is interesting. I do find they call it racial origin. It's really ethnicity, and it says Scottish here. Now you'll see my grandfather wasn't born in Scotland. He was born in Donkin, Nova Scotia, which was also, he actually was born in a place called Dominion number 6, because it was originally named after the mining area. It wasn't until the 1940s, I think, it adopted officially the name Donkin, though it had sort of been known as that beforehand. Okay, so it gives me some information there. So it gives me his parents' name and also his age. It does tell me he was age 20. So if I look at the date of this marriage, he August 1943. I know my grandfather was born actually on Victoria Day, not Victoria Day, but the actual anniversary of Queen Victoria's birthday, which is the 24th of May. So I know then if I take May is before August, so if I just take simply, so he already had his birthday in May, and he was 20, so he would have been born in 1923, which is correct, which is what I do know about him. So I'm going to put that information I have, but also their marriage. So sorry, we're doing their marriage record here. So their marriage is 18th of August 1943. If in doubt, often there's something like this at the top or the bottom. Sometimes there's something that will give you the exact how to get the citation of it. So this gives me the information, and really the great thing is I can just go like this, and then I can tell it the date. And again, I know it was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Okay. Now I can add an event or fact, and I can also add a record. So let's add a marriage registration. So we're going to add a picture. Now, I don't have a picture yet. So how am I going to get a picture? And what is that picture of? So let's just go to here. We're going to go and take the family tree, the marriage registration I'd been looking at from the Nova Scotia from the Nova Scotia Genealogy site, and I'm going to take this record and I'm going to actually save it. So how I can do that on this here is I can actually just click on it. Sorry. It gives me the option here, down here. If I click on it down here, it comes up and I can just right click and I can do save image. And I'm going to go into documents. Yes, as it was a picture of Hitler. It's nothing really suspicious. It's just something I was working on for a history video that I needed an image of him. So I'm just going to put, again, And I'm just going to put a folder where I'm going to keep them, and I'm going to save this here. And I'm going to call it what I want to call it is so it's significant to me. And I usually just for marriage, I just do this. Sometimes I might just use the last names, and I'm going to save it. So when I go there, I now have the option to look in that folder, and I can attach that. I'm going to copy it into the media folder because it creates its own folders. So it's just asking me a few things. The picture contains embedded comments. Would you like to put them in the description field? So sure, let's go yes. So I can put in here, again, and then I'm going to go so I have that saved there. So that's now attached, and that's it. If I click on here, I will see it. So yeah, Matt, if you're looking to do that, you actually can definitely make sure you subscribe and check me out on membership. If you do want to support me, that would be great. If you join one of my membership levels, you can be able to support my channel on a regular basis. And this is one of my old friends. Yeah, thank you very much, Dean. I really appreciate it. Dean's quite an interesting character. He does a lot of hammock camping around Atlantic Canada and beyond. He's been a friend for years, and I do appreciate you tuning in tonight. Okay, so I can add all kinds of things to this. The other things we need to do is we need to make sure we have the information saved as a source. So in this marriage, so marriage sources. So this is where we get to put the detail for the marriage. So we have, let's do the source name. And so it's an online database. And then I'm going to go to step 2, and it's going to ask me some information about this. So I would just fill this out with the appropriate information. I'm going to put this here. Basically, what I do when I do fill out these sources for these type of things, oh, am I on the wrong marriage? You're right. Thank you very much. Cancel. There we go. Sorry, I am on the wrong people. Okay. So if I add the source, so I got to go back and do this all again. So I'm not actually going to fill this out right now, but I'm just going to show you how I'd fill that out, what information I would use. So all the information that I have here on my source is basically, this is the important thing. This is what I would call it. I'd use this sort of as the title. I'd link it to my image, and I'd use this URL, but the interesting thing is this URL has changed in the past as they've updated their website. So these are the two things that are really important. Registration year, which you already have, but if there's anything that points out a specific registration number, etc., it's really important. So yeah, it's really, really important that you take that registration, because that is you. Or if you find those things like microfiche number, anything that directs to the physical document, as opposed to just the website, you want to include that. Include the URL if you want for quick access, and just be aware that those can change. So at some point it might stop working. And again, that's a good reason also to download the copy of the file. So looking at their record again, it starts to give me some information. I got my grandfather's, actually let's go here. We'll do this, it's easier to look. So I got his parents' names, and then I got my information about my grandmother, Charlotte Florence. Tells me that she's a stenographer, and her industry or business is education. At this time, she was working as a secretary at a school. She is Presbyterian, and her racial origin is Scottish. Tells me her father's name, John L. McKinnon, where he was born, and it has her mother's name. Unfortunately, it does not have her mother's place of birth. These are all things that would be very helpful to have, but it's what we do have that is available. So it also gives her age, and you'll see here my grandfather, he's listed as, he originally had a soldier, but then it was gunner in the RCA, which is the Royal Canadian Artillery. The reason was, and that kind of industry or business is national defense. This was at the point he had been trained already. He was originally just a soldier. He did become an anti-aircraft gunner. So his mother's name and her father's name. So we have those two pieces of information. So going with that, we're going to go back to the Nova Scotia archives. I'm just going to leave this open here for reference, so I have that document to look at. But I know we have his father. His father is Arthur, and his last name is Anderson. Now, I know that Donkin happens to be in Cape Breton County. If you're not familiar with the places that your ancestors are from, you don't have a lot of information. This is something really important to do, is to get that information, start looking it up. So if the things to note would be often in communities that are in different municipalities, find out where they are, what counties they might be in, and try to also think about look at some of the history, because sometimes places change over time as boundaries change for counties, new counties get created or sometimes absorbed, depending where you're at. You sort of want to know that and be aware. The positive thing with that is usually in most jurisdictions in Canada I've come across, the records, if there's been a change in county, the records online at least try to match up that as what it is currently. But this Cape Breton County had been Cape Breton County before and after. I know he was born in Port Morion. It actually was called Cow Bay at the time he was born, I believe. It wasn't until later it became Port Morion. So let's look and see what information we have on him. So the first thing I have here is actually his, came up right away, is his marriage registration. Now, I know this is the right one because his wife's name is Elizabeth Baxter. Shortened, it is Lizzie. So I know this is the correct information. So I'm going to look at this particular record. So I'm actually just going to open this in a new tab so we can go back there. Now you'll notice this is a different type of marriage record than the previous one. This here is, you'll find in a lot of jurisdictions very similar to this. They use this type of book sort of format. So with this, I can start to find out some information. So I know this was book 1841. Again, this is the information you want to put in your source when you save it. And he's number 31, their record. So they're actually the top one there. So you have, they were married in Glace Bay, which is the community next to Donkin. They were married at a Presbyterian church. The United Church did not exist at this point, so they would not have been part of the United Church. So we have Arthur Anderson and Lizzie Baxter. We have his ages 24. This is in February of 1910. And Elizabeth's at 19. And we're gonna come across something that's pretty common when we do this. So he is a minor. He lives at number 6. Remember I said Donkin was originally called number 6 or Dominion number 6. Now, Elizabeth is said to be living in Glace Bay. He was born in Port Morion. She was born in Edinburgh. So she is my last ancestor to actually have come from Scotland. She arrived in Canada in 1905. And I'm going to show you how I can find some more information about that. So this is great, though. This does give his parents' name and her parents' name. So we have a lot of information. So just from knowing my grandfather, from that one single grandfather, I was able to find the information on his parents. So if you look at mine's the first generation, my parents are second, grandparents are third generation. I get the fourth generation, his parents, and then his parents' parents are both there. Doesn't have their professions there. And later, like I said, you saw in that other document, did give the father's place of birth. But there's other places we can find that. So that gives us a lot of information. So just from one, knowing my grandparents and finding their marriage record, I was able to then find multiple records to prove the next few generations. And through there, I can, again, look and find other things on the Nova Scotia archives that they have available. For instance, this would be my grandfather's death registration. So the easy thing is, if you can't find the birth in this, I would switch to deaths after marriages because that's the only thing I have left. And I know this is when he died. And how I can confirm this is if I look at the death record. It has his parents' name, and there it has his mother's name. Remember I said I didn't have his mother Annie's maiden name? It is available on his death record. And it tells me here he was a minor. He lived number 6. He was last worked in 1939. His wife's name was Elizabeth Anderson. So this all matches to the marriage record, so I know this is the correct person. You're going to notice this thing too. I mentioned this in other videos. You're going to notice a lot of times if you have Scottish relatives in Atlantic Canada, up to a certain period, and particularly in more rural areas, their racial origin, they would not list as Scottish, but they would list as Scotch. I know I've been told by a number of people are not Scotch, they're either Scottish or a Scot, but it is a term that people use to identify themselves. So he last worked on December 13, December. He also gives me his birth date here. The things with death records, they're a primary source, but they're also a secondary source for some things, because there is an informant here. This is the informant is, you'll always usually find this, and it's the person who filled out the information. So this was filled out by Charles Anderson, who was his brother, and he lived on Brookside Street in Glace Bay. So Charles Anderson, I'm assuming he might know his brother's date of birth, but since this is not an event that happened at that time, I would not consider this a primary source. I would probably choose one. I would probably put it down if that's all I had, but I would note this is my only source, and I would be open to finding it elsewhere if I found something else confirmed it. I'm assuming December 13th. He probably knew the birth date. The year, as his brother, he probably does know it. If it was a child, he might not know it, because often parents didn't reveal their true age. Sometimes they didn't know. It had gotten it gets sort of lost over time. So we do see, like I said, he worked in December 1939 was the last day he worked, and he wound up dying in July 28th. So just little over 7 months later, after working, he died. It gives me all kinds of things here. Some of it is not really pertinent to genealogy as far as getting the record, but it's interesting to note some of these things. He died of lobar pneumonia from silicosis. This is basically miners, common disease amongst coal miners, often called black lung. That they just basically from working in the mines. His age was 54 years, 7 months, and 5 days. Again, same with the birth date. This is they calculate that based on what the birth date was told as. You have to look at the informant, and you also want to, hopefully, if you can, have other records that verify that birth date. So, talking about birth date, so where's one of the best places in Canada when you're looking for, if you have ancestors around that time and you want to find their birth date? If you use the 1901 Canada census, it gives the exact, they recorded the exact day and birth date of the person, where other years just recorded the year or sometime of birth or sometimes just their age. So I'm going to look up Arthur Anderson. And the other thing said he was born in 1885. I'm going to set a range. Again, I don't necessarily trust it or distrust it. I'm just not certain. And I'm going to look in Nova Scotia and it gives me a little bit more here. I am going to look in, I'm not sure at this point where he would be living. He lived in Cape Breton, so it's probably in the district of Cape Breton, might be district of Port Morion, I'm not sure. So I'm going to just leave that right now blank and see if those come up in any of my searches. So there was one result. This is not him, unfortunately, because it's showing here as born in, this is being recorded in Kings County, which is in a completely different area of Nova Scotia. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to try to look for him in other years. How I can do that is modify my search. Unfortunately, the 1901 census is probably one of the best census because it gives you all kinds of information. But I'm going to do all the ones from 1891 and after. We're going to see what we can find about him. So I have 5 results now. So remember I said Port Morion was called Cow Bay. So there we have in Cow Bay in 1891, 5 years old. So that is Arthur Anderson. So let's see what we have on him when we look at the record. Actually, I'm going to go this way. So it tells me all this information about him. But what I'm really looking for here is I'm going to see he's family number 113. That's something every Canadian census does have, is consistently is a family number, it seems. So you want to use that to look. Now I'm going to zoom in there. So I'm looking at from number 113, which should be right there. So I have Anderson, James, and Annie. So I have all their children. There's Charles, his brother, who was the informant on his death registration. He was 8 years old. So he's an older brother. He's 2 years older. You'll notice there's 2, Andrew and Arthur, the same age. I do remember, and I know this for sure from my own research, but I do remember as a child even being told that he had a twin brother. I do see some common names that are familiar within the family. Here we have 4 months and 12 days. Now, I cannot read that, so I'm not going to begin to tell you who that is. I think that is Roderick, which is a common name in the family and one that was passed on. This name James is very common. James and Andrew are very common throughout my family tree, and James Anderson and Andrew Anderson. So seeing multiple of them at the same time is really not surprising. Now let's see. This is the 1891 census. What information does this have? So you can always find out at the top. So the first thing is every household has a number. And then there's houses that are in construction or uninhabited. They have different numbers there that ranked, and inhabited houses, and then families. So this is that family number I was talking about. That's how I found him easily. So we have their name, their sex, their age, whether they're married or widowed, their relationship to the head of the family. He was listed as a son. His country or province of birth. This one had whether they are French Canadian, place of birth of the father, place of birth of the mother, and religion. So let's go back, and we're going to go specifically looking at his father, because this is going to give us some information we didn't have. So we're going to go over here, Nova Scotia. So he's Presbyterian. Both his parents were his father, Arthur's father, both his parents were born in Nova Scotia, and they're Presbyterians. Again, very consistent with the information we already have. he was a minor as well. Again, every Anderson in this line, in fact, I think my grandfather was one of the first ones in his direct line that was not a minor. His older brothers worked in the mine, and I believe his younger brother did as well. He's not French Canadian, and it has this other information, whether they can read, write, or the deaf, the blind, or have unsound mind. So we have that record. Let's go back to my search results. So we have him at 5 years old. We have him in 1921 at 35 years old. And then we have him in 1931 at 46 years old. Now, let's go back and see what we had here. If I remember correctly, his death registration was he died in July. So in July, he was born in, his date of birth was listed as December 1885. So this is partially the thing here. Again, why I do search, and you always leave yourself that 1 or 2 years, is because you're going to find people that are not going to match up the right date, because they just assume their year of birth based on somebody in the house says there's a certain age. They basically calculate that age as if they were born in that year, which is why you have that discrepancy. Even though these are 10 years apart, there's 11 years, not 10 years discrepancy in his age. So we look at 1921, 1931, and there's also a 1911. These are all him in Dominion 6. Again, the age is kind of consistent there. This would have been the right age, except he did not live in Kings County at that time. So let's look at 1911. So he was married in 1910. So if we see, do we have 1911 here? We have 1911. So let's see what we can find when we go to the 1911 record. At this point, he should be married. And I want to go back to his marriage record. Remember, I'm showing Elizabeth Baxter as being 19 here. So 19, if it was 1910, and this was February 1910, she would have been born in 1990, 1991, or 1991. She was actually born, 1890 or 1891. She was actually born in 1892. From her death registration, but there's some discrepancy here. Could be specific reasons why. So let's look at here. We have Arthur Anderson. So if I go to the details, again, we want to know what page number and family number. He's on page 5. It's family number 41. It gives us a basic summary of some of the information. It has his month of birth and year of birth. So that in 1911 didn't have the day, unfortunately, like it did in 1901. But let's look at this record. And then this is the information you do want to sort of record when you do keep these, record these as a source. But again, particularly these two pieces of information here, the micro reel, film reel number, and the image number are really important because those don't change, whereas links might change, other things might change as well. Anybody have any questions at this point? Sorry, I haven't been paying attention to the chat there. So yeah, these here, so we're looking at him again when he was family number 41. So let's look at here, and we'll go to family. So he's right actually here, family number 41. So I have him and Lizzie. It's his wife. So it has her birthday as December 1892, and she's listed as 18 years old. So if you the Canadian census in 1911. Was on June 1st. I think it was in 1921, all the Commonwealth sort of went to a customized year where they at least for a while, all the Commonwealth countries used. I think it was either the 1st of May or the 1st of April. I'd have to double check that to remember. But it gives her birthday is 1892, and she's 18 years old. So in 1911, on June 1st in 1911, she's only 18 years old. But alas, on February 8th, 1910, she was 19. What happened there? Well, lots of things. Could be if she was actually born in 1892 in February, and her birthday is not until December, she would not have been 18. So lying about your age would make it so that she would not need her parents' permission, not that she didn't have it, to get married. But it would basically deem her as an adult. And we're going to see that through different records, her age is actually going to change. 1892 is correct. This would give it different. In fact, I did a whole video on her, one of the first videos I ever did, and I had recently redid it. It's let's see if I can. It was one of my favorite videos. It was something I did when I first started. Yeah, I'm going to share this here. 1 second. So in this video here, called Truth Beyond the Ticket, My Great-Grandmother's Voyage, basically, I talk about her parents lying about her age so she could get on the trip over from Scotland to Nova Scotia at a cheaper rate. At least that's my assumption, would be the reason they would have lied about her age at that time, because it only makes sense. In this case, instead of making her older, it made her younger. So she would be able to get that discount. Anyways, check that out if you haven't. It's one of my favorite videos. So when I look at this, again, it has lots of great information here on this particular year. So we have the month of birth, the year of birth, age at last birthday. Now we have their country of birth. So we're going to go to my my grandparents here. So when we go across, we're going to notice my grandmother was born in Scotland. This next one is the year they became a naturalized Canadian. So it was listed as 1905. Again, you see the Scotch, all listed as Scotch there. Now, you're going to see this. There's a niece, Lizzie Strang, who is a niece of my great-grandparents. She was born in 1897. She's 13, and she was born in Scotland. She came to Canada in 1902. And it has what their current current citizenship is, you're going to notice it's kind of, I think that says Canadian, but does it? They're all Presbyterians. Now this here was their chief occupation. They had none. Her and her niece did not have a career, but you'll see that she was. She doesn't even have listed as homemaker. Sometimes that's what you'll see. I've seen homemaker. I've seen wife. And their employment, where it was, sort of what they did. There's different things that they have available for. Each census has different information. If you want to find out what all these are, the best way is actually you can search on the Library of Congress individual site, and it will tell you what each individual column is. Oh, that is no problem. I really appreciate it. I do like helping out people, and anybody, if you do have any questions here, definitely let me know, and I will try to answer them, whether it's about my family tree or about your own. I will try to give it an answer as best I can. Just 1 second here. Just checking through my sources here. So this is on Twitch. So this is somebody that is watching me on Twitch. I don't know what that means. It sounds like they're from Russia. Anyways, I'm glad that I have somebody watching from Twitch. I just started recently also going live on the Twitch. So yeah, on Twitch, I stream on Twitch and on YouTube, as well as Facebook. So yeah, when you're looking up this, in the census, you will get different information. So by having that, just going back, having that information, I was able to find multiple generations just from knowing who my grandparents were. I could go down in different lines. It's not always that easy. You're not always going to find the information. For instance, if I was to follow, go back to my parents, and I was to follow my grandparents, and I was to follow and look for her father or her mother and find some of their information, it's not going to be as easy. One particular thing is that does cause problem is this name Guinness. So, but let's just do that, and I'm going to show you. This is where it's not always easy. So we're going to go back to genealogy, and I'm going to search for. Now, I do have a name of a place. He was Malagawatch, so I could put that in there. And that's in Cape Breton County. I could put that there, but let's just see. Sorry, that's in Inverness County, but let's just see what I find first. So I'm going to actually go to death, because that would be the most recent thing. And I'm going to look for recent deaths. because he would have died. So I'm going to go to the oldest one, and actually the second oldest one, I guess, is where I want, because I know he died in the 1960s. I'm just looking at deaths. He died when my mother was 10 years old, so actually might have been 1958-ish. Let's search the previous one. There we go. Actually, this might be him right there. I just saw John L. John L. McKinney, Glace Bay, yes, because he was living in Glace Bay in 1960. So he actually, well, my mom was 12. I always thought it was when she was younger. This is the correct one. So I am able to get his information, right? So I have John L. McKinnon, and I have, that was his father's name, and his mother's name is Charlotte Campbell. They were both born in Cape Breton. No specific information on where they were born. We don't have even a day and a month of birth. I was able to get that through another source, actually in his own written hand, through a small little notebook that I had. No, he recorded his day and month of birth, which is a really fascinating thing. Other sources for this might be like you might have in the a family Bible or something else that is recorded. So I'm able to get some information. I'm able to, his father had the same name as him, and I just have that they were both born in Cape Breton. So so him I do have, again, if I go there, I have his death. Now let's look actually in marriages. So there is no marriage record listed for, so we have John McKinnon, and my grandmother was born in 1922. So I'm assuming it's sometime before then, or sometime after. So let's look, I think, and we're looking for John McKinnon and Catherine McGinnis. Now, again, I could go to and actually search if I go back there. I can search specifically here. So we have Catherine, and I'm going to just put Innes, because this is the great thing about the Nova Scotia site. It's very good with the MAC names being mixed is MC, MAC, because it can be different on different records. And I'm just going to have that it contains Kinnan. And so he was born in 1879. I knew, let's take a guess that he was not born and not married before he was, well, he was married before he was 20. That'd be 1900. In 1900, his wife-to-be wasn't that old because she was only born in 1890 something. So I'm going to look basically between the years 1915 and 1923. And I'm going to search. So there's none. So I'm going to even get rid of the first name, and I'm going to search. So I have a Catherine Jean McGinnis and a John Archie McKinnon. His middle name is not Archie. His middle name starts with L. So, and they were not in Colchester County. So this is not the correct person. Neither is this. She was not a Mary McGinnis, and he was not John Joseph. Ooh, John Joseph. Their marriage record, I've never actually been able to find. I am assuming that they were married, but I know even for my great grandmother, if I just go and search her, I can't even find any birth records of hers. So if I go to, again, I'm just using INIS because it contains there. I know she was born in the 1890s. So actually, let's go back. So let's look at birth. So we're looking at for Catherine McGinnis. Now, there's certain things I'm going to tell you that I can tell it's not hers. This is not her. As far as I know, she did not have the name Sarah. And yes, I know from other research I did afterwards that her father's name is not Charles. It's not John. Her father's name is actually Charles. So I'm not finding anything in births. Marriages I already checked. There's nothing there for that would be appropriate for her for birth. Death. She died in 1980. She is not in the range for Nova Scotia for the years that they cover. It's around 1973 is the current cutoff. I think it's 75 years. So she's not in that range. So I'm not going to find her. I cannot find her anywhere on there, but I can find her some information off her in the Canadian census. So if I go back to my search results, and I'm going to, this is always the easiest way, just modify results. And again, sometimes she's there with a K and sometimes she's with a C. I'm going to get rid of the birth date. And there's a few other things you can put here. I can put Cape Breton in here. That might help, but I'm not going to, just because in different times she'll be in different places, and it wasn't always Cape Breton County where she was at. So let's look at 1931. At 1931, she was already married, so she would have actually had the name McKinnon. Oops, I got to modify the search. It's sort of so if I search here and I just go to 1931, so I have 1921, 1931. We're going to go look for the 1931 specifically. Actually, in 1931, I know she was living in Glace Bay, which is considered in Cape Breton County. But let's just see here. Let's just look at 1931. So we have a Catherine that's 10 years old, one that's 9 years old in Cumberland. Nope. one that's 71 picked out too old. One that is 24 years old, which is still too young at that point. $61 is too old. So here we go in Glace Bay. So we have Catherine McGinnis McKinnon, which is interesting. So she is listed as line 36, and this one gives a specific line number. Some of the previous ones did not have that, and it gives the family number there as well, family number 7. Now, I'm going to look at this. So we see here Catherine McGinnis. We have Charlotte Florence, my grandmother, her sister Kathleen, and her brother John. Also living at their house, we have Daniel Nicholson, John Lachlan McKinnon, George Miller, James Kafkas, and Violet. Now, these people here, you'll see, are all boarders. And it's kind of has their border, and they have them as listed as husband and wife. It has their relationships there, their actual street address that they lived on. So this is, I find interesting. You have this line here is, if own, give value. If rented, give rent. So they're simply listed as 50. I'm assuming that is rent, not ownership, because the value of a house, especially when holding that many, the rent should, the value of the house would be more than $50. Not bad rent. I'm sure she made some money with these boarders that covered her rent. So we have her information there, 37 and 31. So that would tell me she's born 1894, which is correct. But again, you can't find any of that information anywhere else that you'll be able to find. She is listed as Presbyterian as all her children. Her husband is listed as a United Church. He's a salesman. He sells sewing machines. And so this total earnings in the past 12 months. So basically his annual salary was $650. This tells us lots of information. Did they get married somewhere else? No. A lot of I'm left with not even positive they necessarily ever did get married. Though when I do search his record, he is listed as married. They sort of do say that they're married here. But I'm not really sure. I can't say positively that they were married. It might just been assumed. I might be able to find, if I can find church records. I was actually told that some of the church records for their time actually went missing. I know we had that years ago because we were looking to find out her sister's, her birth record. There was no birth registration at that time, so we were trying to find a baptismal record that would have it. But I remember being told, this was when I was a young child, that these records were gone because the church had burnt down. Okay, so I've been on for an hour and a half. I'm going strong tonight. Feeling good. Any questions, anybody? Because I think I'm going to wrap up. But I want to show you that it looked like those first, my grandfather's family, I was able to pretty quickly find multiple generations. It's a lot harder sometimes. Most times it's harder than that, as shown by my grandmother's, where I'm trying to look for her mother's information. Her father's information I actually can come by pretty quick. If I go to John McKinnon, again, like I said, I found his information as far as his birth. I found his death. So when I look for his birth, he was born in Inverness, specifically Malagawatch is where he was born, whether it lists that or not. Let's just see if I go to his deaths. He was died in 1960, right? In Glace Bay. So what did it list here as his, whoops, I'm going to do this so it listed his year of birth as 1879. So let's go back to births, and we're going to go to um, 1879 and see what we have. So we have nothing there for him, but we do have this John Lockley McKinnon. Now this is interesting because if you remember here, we did have a John Lachlan McKinnon who was a boarder of theirs, and John Lachlan McKinnon. He's John Lachlan McKinnon as well. He's boarder and he was 52. So he was 52 and 52. So they have the same, they're the same age. So 52 and 31 would have been 18. It would have been at 31 at 1900. And so they would have been born 21 years before, which would be 1879. So let's look at this one. This John Lachlan McKinnon, again, 1894. Not the right era. So we don't have anything about him, but we did have some information on his death. I had that his mother's maiden name was Charlotte Campbell, and we have that his father was also John L. McKinnon. So let's look for other John L. McKinnon's death. So we're looking at John L. McKinnon. We're going to say that he was at least alive when he was conceived. So if we're looking for births, we're going to see if we can find him. No, he was not 14. So the earliest one to 1865. So we know we're out of date there. We're going to look for marriages though. So we're looking for John McKinnon, and we're going to look for a Charlotte Campbell. Okay, so this is, we're not finding it. So let's do this because we know she's a Campbell. And we know he's a McKinnon. but I'm just going to put contains Kinnan for last name, sorry. So there we go. We have Charlotte Campbell and John McKinnon, his parents. They're listed as being born and married in 1867 in Big Harbor in Inverness County. So again, it's one of these ones that's a book. They are on page 18. They're number 14. So the way this has the groom and then the bride. He was 43. She was 22. He was a bachelor spinster. He was a farmer. He lived in lived in Malagwatch. Was born in Malagwatch, and then it lists his parents. Now, this is interesting. These are not his parents, and you notice they're both the same. So it lists her parents as both their parents, which is incorrect. I'm sure this happens from time to time. But we know her parents' names are Farquhar and Catherine Campbell. I don't have her maiden name, unfortunately. Sometimes it gives that information, and sometimes it doesn't. But it tells me when they were married, where they were married, and what type of church it was. And actually, way over here, gives the name of the witnesses. And the officiant. So it looks like we have N. McDonald and THO. It's probably Thomas Campbell. And their minister was Reverend G. something. G. Lords or Forbes, it looks like. So I could actually look that up I have a book on the Presbyterian Church in Cape Breton. I can, and it does mention the Malagwatch Church. I could specifically look if I want more detail on the minister and find him out. So yeah, so his parents, I actually can find information about. In fact, his mother, if I go and besides searching their marriage record, now if I now just switch this to we're going to just, as her married name is now McKinnon. We're going to look for Charlotte. Because again, her death registration won't be under her maiden name. And we're going to look for death. So she died in 1931. Charlotte McKinnon, whose maiden name was Charlotte Campbell. And so it has her information here. She's female. She's Scotch. She was born in Nova Scotia. She was born in 1847. Her age was 84 years old. She was a farmer's wife. At the place of death, she lived there for 84 years in the province. Doesn't have how long she's been in Canada as an immigrant because she was born here. Now, for her father's name, it says Frank Campbell. We look at the other one, it says Farquhar, and we see that maiden name of her mother, it lists it as looks like Katie. Again, in the marriage we had Catherine, and it looks like Campbell again. So it's possible her maiden name was also Campbell, but it's most likely that she just did not know who the informant, who was her son, who would be my grandmother's uncle, was Dan McKinnon, and he lived in Malagwatch, and he was a son. Possibly he did not know his mother's maiden name. And again, it has Katie. I think this is interesting. The Frank Farquhar is a Gaelic name, would have been probably called Frank by people in English. So you can get a lot of information. Again, these are pretty on her. I was able to get most information. Was not able to get, I don't believe when I looked, they did not have any birth registration, but that's mostly because of when she was born, 1847. So I'm going to put 1840 to 1855. I know it's well in there, but just to see what we have. Is there any birth records? No. Neither is there any death records during that period. Again, so her birth is not available. I could narrow down. I could just search for last name Campbell, and I might just search for births, because maybe she's not listed as Charlotte. She went by another name. So we have, but we know it was 1847, and they have Mary Campbell, not her. Particularly this place I know is in the totally wrong area. And if we even look here, we're going to see that we have Mary Campbell. Now this is interesting. Race is white. Often, like I said, it is Scotch. It's listed as. Her father was John Campbell, who was born in Scotland as well. Farquhar Campbell was born in Scotland as well, in Scotland, which leads me to let's just search Farquhar. I doubt I'm going to find any birth record, but let's see what we have. So this is a death record for Farquhar Campbell. In what community? Malagawatch was. You look through my other things, that's a common name that keeps showing up. Listed in, he is in number 69 on page 69. So we have Farquhar Campbell. He's married. He was born in Scotland. His parents were John and Flora Campbell. And this, I've never been sure if that's Sailor or Taylor. I'm assuming it is Sailor. So he died on the 15th of April in 1872. He did not see his grandson, my great-grandfather, being born. He died of asthma. And there's the information about who were the witnesses or filed the registration. So able to find him. So if he was 62 and he died in 1872, he was born either in, again, depending on the exact date that this happened. The date is over here. So he is 62. Sorry, he's showing he was 62 in 1872. That would mean he was born in 1810. or possibly 1809, depending on when his actual birth date is. And so we could also look for him in the census. Since he died in 1872, I'm assuming I would find him if I did search in the Canadian census in 1871. So I'm going to modify my search, and I'm just going to search 1871. Now we're going to search just Nova Scotia. I'm going to risk putting Malagawatch. Okay, I'm going to modify it. Take out Malagawatch. And we're going to go district. We're going to try Inverness. Okay. So we have a Farquhar in 1871 that is 60 years old. That does sound like it's him. These here are actually the exact same record. It's listed twice. I'm not sure why. But let's look at what we have here. So it says he was 1811 when he's born. He's Presbyterian Church of Lower Provinces. And place of birth was Scotland. Now, again, he is line number 20. Not a lot about him here. Let's go and modify searches. So there are censuses that are available before then. So we're going to modify the search. And we're going to search 1861, 1861, 1851. See if there's anything we can find. Okay, actually, let's remove that 1871. 1861. So we have a Farquhar Campbell in 1851. And what information do we have on him? So he is line number 31 in this point. We have this line here. It's hard to tell which is the right one because the numbers seem off. I'm assuming it's this line along here. There we go. And in this one, they didn't really record information. Just you'll notice number of males, number of females, and a total. Birth since 1860 on March 1st, March 1860. So basically, it'll be less than a year. People that are under 1 year old, it's different age ranges. So it wasn't a detailed census that it gave information. Now, the other interesting thing is Nova Scotia records. So if I look up Nova Scotia, besides just these general marriage and death records, they have other information in their holdings. So you can search there, you can look different ways, but let's look up census. Let's see what censuses they have for the province. So they have census and tax records from 1767 to 1838. So let's see what I have. Do I have Farquhar Campbell? So we have census returns. Do we have anything for Cape Breton? We have census returns for these years, and these years. So let's go census returns 1838. Now this here, nothing. Poll tax records, census records, second census records. 1827, was he there? It doesn't look like it has any of the, this looks like it's all mainland. Yeah. But they do have Cape Breton land records. This one actually. So we have Cape Breton land petitions, 1787 to 1843. I can't find him there, but I did find him in another one, another set of records on this before. I'll have to look to, I did have it listed there. Anyways, that's sort of where I'm going to end tonight. I've been going for a long time, almost 2 full hours. I do really appreciate you guys. So let's do the one thing I do like to do. Just last call for questions. So it's not coming out of here right. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I need to announce it's last call at the bar. Oh.
So if there's any questions, now's the time to put them in there and I'll try to answer them. I don't see any questions. I'll move on and we'll wrap things up. Okay. You all have a great day. As I wrap things up here, I'm going to leave you with some music.
Black water beneath our feet, Saw cracked hands grip rotting wood. The old world spat us to the deep. They stole our land, they drained our blood. Oh! Planet's cliffs affect our highland peaks. Soul spray stings like all the tears we've wept. Round the headland, shelter from the deep. A healing cold where hope might be kept. We are the cursed, the cast out breed. This frozen shore will be our test. On these rocks, we plant our feet. Turn this wilderness to home. Through the cold and through the heat, we must Scotland's blood and blood. Scots on the rocks, we won't retreat. On your wide and home. Dig the graves in frozen ground. Another family lost today. The sickness moves without a sound. Death is the only debt we pay. Children's cries pierce winter air. Empty bellies, hollow eyes. The fever takes us unaware. Spring brings hope as winter dies. We are the dead who won't lay down. This cursed earth will know our name. On these rocks, we plant our feet. Turn this wilderness to gold. Through the cold and through the heat, we were Scotland's blood and bold. Scots on the rocks, we won't retreat. Our new island home. No king will save us now. No lord will hear our plea. We break ourselves with our own power, or die upon our knees. On these rocks, we plant our feet. Turn this wilderness to home. Through the cold and through the heat, we were Scotland's blood and bold. Scots on the rocks, we won't retreat. Our new island home.
It's cold on the eastern shore. Salt wind cuts like it did before. Grandfather's hands on these same nets. Blood and sweat, we don't forget. Steel plows turn the frozen ground. No surrender, we stand our ground. Storm clouds gather, the ocean roars. We've weathered worse than what's in store. Cracked leather, diesel, briny boots have walked the bloodline. All machines still run today. We built this life the hardest way. Farmers and fishermen, we are the backbone of this land. Salt in our veins and dirt on our hands. We bend but never break. We give more than we take. Farmers and fishermen, standing strong where our fathers stand.
sight. We dug up the